The house had learned the language of night long before Mara did. It spoke in small sounds, the tick of cooling pipes, the click of wood fibers releasing the day's heat, the soft shush of leaves brushing the siding like fingertips asking to be let in. Mara lay awake on a mattress she had dragged into the living room because the bedroom felt too far away from everything else, and listened. The dark pressed in on the windows, a weight rather than an absence, as if it could bruise if you leaned against it hard enough. She had moved here to be alone. That was the story she told her friends, and it was mostly true. The town had been shrinking for decades, pulling inward like a dying star, and the house at the end of Fox Hollow Road had been empty since the old couple passed within months of each other. When she first toured it, dust lay thick on every surface, and the real estate agent kept his hands folded, his eyes sliding away from the hallway that led to the back rooms. Mara thought the house looked tired, not haunted. Houses were allowed to be tired. The first night she slept here, she dreamed of an eye. It filled the dream, round and unblinking, its iris the color of wet soil. It watched her without malice, without curiosity, simply watched, and when she woke she felt the strange relief of being seen, as if a question had been answered. She laughed at herself in the morning, blamed the unfamiliar sounds, the way the dark in the country was thicker than the city's diluted shadow. But the watching did not stay in her dreams. It began with the sense that something in the house had paused when she entered a room, the way conversation dies when you step into a space not meant for you. She would flip a switch and the light would reveal the same furniture, the same walls, but the air felt disturbed, as though she had interrupted a held breath. Once, she thought she saw movement at the edge of the hallway mirror, a narrowing of shadow that resolved into nothing.
The house had learned the language of night long before Mara did. It spoke in small sounds, the tick of cooling pipes, the click of wood fibers releasing the day's heat, the soft shush of leaves brushing the siding like fingertips asking to be let in. Mara lay awake on the mattress she had dragged into the living room because the bedroom felt too far away from everything else, and listened. The dark pressed in on the windows, a weight rather than an absence, as if it could bruise if you leaned against it hard enough. She had moved here to be alone. That was the story she told her friends, and it was mostly true. The town had been shrinking for decades, pulling inward like a dying star, and the house at the end of Fox Hollow Road had been empty since the old couple passed within months of each other. When she first toured it, dust lay thick on every surface, and the real estate agent kept his hands folded, his eyes sliding away from the hallway that led to the back rooms. Mara thought the house looked tired, not haunted. Houses were allowed to be tired. The first night she slept here, she dreamed of an eye. It filled the dream, round and unblinking, its iris the color of wet soil. It watched her without malice, without curiosity, simply watched, and when she woke she felt the strange relief of being seen, as if a question had been answered. She laughed at herself in the morning, blamed the unfamiliar sounds, the way the dark in the country was thicker than the city's diluted shadow. But the watching did not stay in her dreams. It began with the sense that something in the house had paused when she entered a room, the way conversation dies when you step into a space not meant for you. She would flip a switch and the light would reveal the same furniture, the same walls, but the air felt disturbed, as though she had interrupted a held breath. Once, she thought she saw movement at the edge of the hallway mirror, a narrowing of shadow that resolved into nothing when she turned her head. Mara was a practical person. She made lists. She set routines. She labeled boxes. When the sense of being watched crept along her spine, she noted it the way she might note a draft or a flickering bulb. Old houses did this, she told herself. They had corners that didn't quite make sense, spaces that learned how to hide. Still, she began to leave lamps on. She told herself it was to save the trouble of flipping switches when she moved from room to room, but really it was to cut holes in the dark, to break it into manageable shapes. The dark resented this. She could feel it pooling in the corners, thickening under the stairs, settling in the hallway where the ceiling sloped low enough to make her duck. It pressed against the light like water against glass. The watching intensified at night. She would sit on the couch with a book and feel the weight of attention settle on her, not from any single point but from everywhere at once. The windows reflected her own face back at her, pale and floating, but behind the glass there was only black. The sense was not hostile. That was the worst of it. Hostility could be named, could be fought or fled. This was something older, patient, as if it had been waiting a long time and had no need to hurry now. One evening, While washing dishes, she heard a soft sound behind her, a faint scrape like fabric brushing wood. She froze, hands submerged in warm water, soap bubbles popping against her wrists. The sound came again, closer this time, and she felt the certainty bloom in her chest. Something was standing in the doorway. She turned. The doorway was empty. The hallway beyond yawned, a tunnel of shadow broken by the weak glow of a lamp at the far end. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She laughed, too loudly. And the sound fell flat, swallowed by the house. When she turned back to the sink, she caught her reflection in the darkened window above it. For a moment, the reflection did not move when she did. For a moment, there was another shape behind her, taller, its outline blurred as if seen through water. She spun around. Nothing. Mara did not sleep that night. The next day, she drove into town and bought more lights. She filled the house with them, bulbs blazing in every room, strings of cheap LEDs lining the hallway like a runway. At dusk, she flipped them all on and stood in the living room, hands on her hips, daring the dark to encroach. The house glowed like a ship lit for a festival, every window a square of defiance. It did not help. The watching did not recede. If anything, it grew more focused, more intent. It was as if the light had sharpened it, given it edges. Mara felt it in the way her skin prickled when she moved through the house, in the way her thoughts seemed to echo, to linger as though someone else were turning them over, examining them. She began to notice patterns. The watching was strongest in the back rooms, the ones the real estate agent had hurried past. A narrow study with built-in shelves that smelled faintly of mildew. A spare bedroom with a low ceiling and a single window that looked out onto the trees crowding the yard. A door at the end of the hall that led to the basement. The basement door had always unsettled her. It was heavy, solid wood with an old iron latch that clanked loudly when she opened it. The stairs beyond descended into darkness even in the daytime, the bare bulb at the bottom casting long, warped shadows. She had gone down once, during the inspection, and found nothing but boxes of old books, rusted tools, and a concrete floor stained by decades of damp. She had not gone down since. One night, unable to stand the feeling of being watched any longer, she decided to confront it. The thought came to her fully formed, an absurd bravery born of exhaustion. If something was watching her, then she would watch it back. She would strip away the dark, room by room, until there was nowhere left to hide. She started with the study. She stood in the doorway, light blazing behind her, and stared into the room. The shelves were empty now, the desk bare. The corners held nothing but dust. She stepped inside, heart pounding, and the watching retreated, or seemed to, slipping away like a tide. She moved to the spare bedroom, did the same. The watching thinned, grew diffuse, like mist burned off by the sun. Only the basement remained. She stood before the door for a long time, hand hovering over the latch. The watching pressed close, heavy as a hand between her shoulder blades. She felt a strange pull toward the door, not fear exactly but a gravity, a sense of inevitability. When she finally opened it, the clank of the latch echoed down the stairs like a gunshot. The basement smelled of earth and metal. The bulb flickered as she descended, each step creaking under her weight. Halfway down, she felt it fully for the first time. The watching was no longer diffuse. It had a center. At the bottom of the stairs, she stopped. The bulb swung slightly, casting the room into shifting light and shadow. The boxes and tools took on strange shapes, looming and receding. In the far corner, where the concrete wall met the floor, the shadow was deeper, thicker, as if it absorbed the light rather than reflecting it. Mara, something whispered. The sound was so soft she almost missed it. It was not a voice so much as the idea of one, a suggestion that brushed the edges of her hearing. Her name felt wrong in the air, stretched thin. Who's there? Her voice shook, and the sound seemed to sink into the concrete, to be swallowed whole. The shadow in the corner moved. It did not step forward or retreat. It unfolded. At first, she could not make sense of what she was seeing. The shadow elongated, split, layered over itself. It was like watching ink spread through water, tendrils reaching, withdrawing, reaching again. Within it, points of light appeared, dim at first, then brighter. Eyes. They were not arranged as eyes should be. There were too many, scattered through the shadow like stars through a cloud. They blinked asynchronously, each lid sliding shut and open with a wet sound that made Mara's stomach turn. The watching she had felt for days now had a face, or rather, many faces. It did not move toward her. It did not need to. The basement seemed to contract around it, the walls leaning in, the ceiling lowering. The watching pressed against her from all sides, a weight that made it hard to breathe. You see me now, it whispered, and the sound came from everywhere and nowhere. You have always seen me. What are you? Mara asked, though part of her already knew. The knowledge had been there since the first night, buried under rationalizations and light. The shadow rippled, the eyes shifting. I am the dark that stays, it said. The dark that watches. Houses learn me. People forget me. Images flooded her mind unbidden. The house in other times, lights guttering, shadows deepening. The old couple, sitting in the living room at night, their breaths shallow, their thoughts loud in the quiet. They had felt the watching too, had spoken to it in whispers when sleep would not come. They had fed it with their attention, with their fear, until it had grown comfortable, rooted. You watched them die, Mara said. Yes, it replied, without shame or pride. As I watch you. Rage flared through her fear, hot and sudden. Get out of my house. The shadow laughed, a sound like leaves scraping together. This is not your house, it said. This is my place. I was here when the walls were raised. I will be here when they fall. Mara backed up a step, then another, until she felt the solid presence of the stairs behind her. The watching pressed closer, the eyes brightening. She realized, with a clarity that cut through her panic, that the thing did not want to harm her. Harm would end the watching. It wanted her awake, aware, present. It wanted her attention. She did the only thing she could think of. She closed her eyes. The dark surged, offended. The whispering rose to a hiss, the eyes flaring. Look at me, it demanded. No, she said, and her voice steadied as she spoke. You don't get that. She turned and ran up the stairs, slamming the basement door behind her. The latch clanked into place, and she leaned against the door, chest heaving. The watching battered at her awareness, frantic now, but it could not force her eyes open. She focused on her breath, on the solid feel of the wood at her back, on the hum of the lights upstairs. She did not sleep that night, but she did not open her eyes in the dark either. When dawn came, pale and tentative, she felt the watching recede, not gone but diminished, sulking in the corners. Mara did not leave the house. She did not flee. She learned instead how to live with the watching without feeding it. She kept the lights on when she needed them and off when she didn't. She filled the house with sound, music, conversation, laughter. She invited people over. The watching thinned in company, its eyes dimming, its presence diffused. At night, when the dark pressed close, she closed her eyes and let it pass over her like water over stone. She did not look. She did not wonder. She did not ask questions that would invite answers. The house learned new habits. The dark stayed, as it always would, but it learned to watch without being seen. And Mara learned that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do, when something watches from the dark, is to deny it the one thing it craves most, your gaze.